All right, welcome back to episode 2, Past and Present Cardboard. Got my buddy Doug here, Joe Wood Collector.
How you doing,
And
Jason?
hey, how are you doing, Doug? Happy holidays. Hey, it's getting close to Christmas.
Yes, it is.
Um, so, from my channel perspective, I've been pretty quiet. I've been traveling quite a bit. Went to Spain, New Jersey, not quite as fun. Got sick. I'm just now feeling pretty good. I went 12 days without a video, which is pretty long for me. I just posted recently, but yeah, happy to get back with Doug. And as you can see, we are working on creating a new channel. I think we call the title right now, Past and Present Cardboard. Working on logos, getting some intro videos all set up. So that should happen, probably around, first of the year. You'll see a new channel out there with me and Doug in it.
Super
And be very cool. And then we'll probably start bringing people on as well, do some interviews. There's Doug knows everyone. I'm kind of antisocial, so I'm not as friendly as Doug. So, but he'll definitely get people to come on the channel, and we'll definitely have some conversations because, I think this is a collector's channel, and we're going to be talking about collectors things. If you're tuned in to find about news or gossip or things like that, it's probably not the greatest channel for you. But if you want to learn about cards and sets and what's cool and why we collect, then this is the place for you.
Absolutely.
All right, Doug. So we talked about before we came on, talking a little bit about, the last big REA auction, right? I think there were some really cool cards in that. And Doug is much more in the auction area than I am. I do dabble in auction sometimes, but on Doug, for the most part, that's where you get a lot of your cards for your collection because your cards that you're looking for are so much rare.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I got started probably about 10 years ago, and it's been exciting. It's been a learning curve, a big learning curve. Some of these auction houses have some weird regulations, so it's been a learning curve. But if you're really serious about some tough to get cards, the auction houses is the way to go.
Yeah. And if you were to rate the auction houses, Doug, like who's your top 3 or 4 that you would, really want to pay attention to?
I always do well with REA and Love of the Game. That's my two top. Heritage is pretty classy, but I don't like some of the regulations that they have. I don't like the way their bids and lots end. You can be up all night.
Yeah.
So it's a little frustrating.
Yeah. I've given you my frustrations on Love of the Games, how they end their auctions a little bit too. I just feel like, they should be realistic on time frames, all these auction houses, and not go to like 3 or 4 in the morning. I think it's just,
It's
for people
ridiculous.
who want the cards, it's almost like almost what you call it, like like how much pain will you endure? How long will you stay up to make sure you get the card?
Right.
Which to me is not fun as a collector. Like this isn't like something enjoyable to have to stay up to 4 in the morning to make sure you got the card.
Yeah, on REA, I really like REA because they close out the auctions a little bit differently. We won't go into it right now, but I think by midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, you pretty much know if you're in it or not, and you can feel comfortable to go to bed.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
And I bought cards to REA, so I'm, I think they're good to work with, but yeah, I probably am not the target market for a lot of these cards. A lot of the cards I buy are at shows or on eBay. That's where I still buy a lot of the cards I buy.
Right.
So, one of these days when I get into the big boy cards, I'll have to start paying more attention to these auction houses. But, I still feel like I do okay. But it's definitely, you get the really rare stuff through these auctions for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's look at the last auction, and I'll bring up some of these auction, lots we were going to talk about here, Doug. So you had quite a few circled. So I know the first one you want to talk about here is this Morehouse Baking Babe Ruth, right? This
Right.
card is, you said there's two, right? Two that were found at the same time.
Right.
So, yeah, like what's the deal with this card? Like, why is it so rare?
Well, it was thought not to exist, the Babe Ruth. I think there had been 90 graded total from the set, graded, and until this last 117 lot just got found earlier this year. So they really didn't know if a Ruth or a Jackson was ever going to come up. So the one we're looking at here, they found two of them in this collection. I'll try to give a little background on the Morehouse baking cards, but a gentleman, a collector, was having a garage sale in his neighborhood in Massachusetts, and he was a sports collector, sports memorabilia, some sports cards, long time, and he had actually had some in his garage sale. And a neighbor on a bike rode by and seen he had some baseball cards, and they got talking about baseball cards. And he had said that he got inherited a box of cards from his grandfather, but he didn't really know much about them. He did recognize that he had a Babe Ruth card, so it caught the guy's attention. And he said, "Well, you should go home and catalog and find out what kind of cards these are." It piqued his interest, and after a while, he came back and said, "Well, I know I have a Babe Ruth. I've heard of Joe Jackson. I've heard of a few other players," and they go to find out that it's Morehouse Baking, which is a local bakery, and how rare they were. So he told him to catalog every card he had in his collection, and that they probably should go see REA Auction House. So unbeknownst to us, Jason, this gentleman was at the Cleveland Nationals at the REA auction
Wow.
booth, and he was showing him the 117 cards right then and there.
Wow.
And of course, I think his name is Brian Dwyer, is the president of REA Auctions, and he was just ecstatic, and he wanted him in his auction. So this
Now
is yeah. Go ahead.
these 117 cards, though, they were probably most likely from a store, right? Because they're all canceled, correct?
That's correct. They had a promotion where if you bought a 10-cent loaf of bread, you got a baseball card in it. One of these baseball cards from Morehouse Baking. If you turned in 50 cards to Morehouse Baking, they had a promotion where they were giving away a jump rope for kids, or you could settle between a baseball and a baseball bat. And so obviously 117 cards, at least two people turned in their 50, including two Ruths, for a jump rope.
Wow.
Or a baseball bat or a baseball itself. So,
Which is, kind of crazy to think today. Like, we all have things we regret. I'm sure those people don't even realize what they gave up, at the time they gave it. But, we talked just before the show, like about some bad deals I made in Frank Thomas cards. It happens to all of us. We make some bad deals and sell something too soon. But that's really interesting. I like the fact that canceled doesn't really hurt the grade, and it's makes the cards actually cooler.
Yeah, I actually like the way that PSA put it right on the flip that it's canceled. So when it was redeemed from Morehouse Baking, they would stamp it canceled and then give it back to the people that redeemed them in for the prizes. I find that really cool. So all 117 cards from this collection all have canceled stamped on the back.
So this auction went for was it 871,000, right? Is kind of the last bid or the closing bid, I think here, or 812. Sorry,
$812,000.
And we looked up that a similar M1014 of a normal like Sporting News back went for like 500,000 recently. So it sold for like almost like a 1.5 premium
Yeah.
for this because of the rarity.
Right. So on the scale of rarity, there's 18 different backs for the M101 4s and 5s, and this is considered around the 15 mark out of 18 as far as the rarity.
Okay.
So this is a pretty tough one.
So this is definitely in that area of, super rare and, only going to be in auctions like this.
Correct. Yes.
All right. So another card you want to talk about here is this Honus Wagner Tip Top Bread. So this card definitely is, I'm a Pirates fan. I'm a big time Honus Wagner, fan, obviously. First class Hall of Famer, right? He was in the first induction class.
And such a beautiful card also.
It's a super nice card.
Yeah, and
super nice card.
The painting is from the Carl Horner photograph, which is also from the T206. So it's just a classic picture.
Yeah, I'm wondering, it's not the same photo for my card. I don't think. It's a little different. It's like a different angle pose. But right. I was kind of bragging to Doug earlier that I own a card from the set. So I have this card here, this Howie Kamenetz. It's a 3. And I purchased it, I believe, actually at a show. I don't think I bought this off eBay. I think this is a show purchase, but I do have a 3. I do have a card from the set. And obviously being a pirate collector, this is one of those Alpha and Omega pirate sets because this was to celebrate the World Championship, right? This team won the World Championship, and this whole set is pirates because it's basically honoring that whole team.
It's a commemorative to the 1909 World Series champs.
Yeah. And it's super scarce.
Yes.
So I know you looked up some pricing. What did this card go for last time?
I did not write that down. I know this time it was $186,000 for a PSA 5.
All right, let me look it up in my trusty VCP.
I know there's a PSA pop on this card of 32 total graded cards, and
32.
Yeah,
well, let's look at the last sales here and to see if anything close. So REA auction's already in the books. PSA 1 sold and Heritage the same actual day for the most part for $36,000. So let's see, SGC 4 sold in October for $124. So there wasn't that much of a price difference, and that was in golden for $124,000 for a 4. A PSA 5 brought another $60,000. So going back a year, a PSA 5 sold in Heritage for $132. Let me see if it's the same card. Okay. Let me see here. Love that we can't see the front of the card. So it looks like the only photo that we have of the PSA 5 sale is the back from 2023. So I can't really tell.
Can you bring that screen up, Jason? Can you show up?
Yeah. Hold on a second.
Sure.
All right, so here is the 1910 and the last sales. So you can see the REA auctions already in the books, 186. And then you can see there was a 1 that sold for 36,000 the day before in a Heritage auction. And there was one unauthentic that sold in November. So it's a lot of cards and then again in October there was a 4. So 4 or 5 times this card has sold this year. Seems odd.
The
Here's
4 is
the 4.
the 4 is
4
very
was
nice.
nice.
Yeah.
124. Again, in October, the authentic. I don't know if it's the same card here. So this authentic last year numbers 297 brought 33,000. And then here it brought 18.5. It's not the same. So, but the one I was looking at was this PSA 5 right here that sold in Heritage back in 2023. I don't see any other. There's another PSA 5 that sold in 2021 in Golden for 85. So that's card last numbers 381. Let's see if it's the same one as this one. 381. There it is.
They won.
So the same card sold by Golden in 2021 for $85,000.
Brought
So
100,000 more.
it brought $100,000 more 3 years later. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good point to say that this, we had this whole theory about, COVID era, the COVID era, and
Cards coming down.
that cards are all going down, and then there isn't, like the same market. I mean, that card brought $100,000 more 3 years later after peak COVID sales, right? So,
Yep.
that definitely tells you something.
Yes, definitely.
That, and I think we've kind of said this point over and over to ourselves is that, maybe for cards that are very common, that you're going to see, some of these sales go down.
If you can go to your local card show and
Yeah.
find the cards at the local card show, they're plentiful. They're plentiful, and that's the ones that are taking a little bit of a lick from the COVID hike. I think they're starting to come back down to reality now.
Yeah, and I think, and it's just that epiphany that me and you both kind of had at the Cleveland was there's just so much 50s, 60s, and T cards out there that there's such a high supply. There is demand. There's people that love those cards. That's not saying those cards are don't have demand, but the supply is so high. And then you get cards like this, which you said there's only like 30 something total ever graded.
Yeah, 32 I'd say, but I didn't look up the SGC, but I think this card is mainly graded by PSA.
Yeah.
I did see an SGC 4.
But I mean, there's not more than 100 or 200 cards these floating
No,
around.
I would say there's probably 50 or 60 total graded.
So to me, it's just that sort of like the difference is that even on T cards, T206 cards, there's hundreds and hundreds of Christy Mathewsons, floating around. There's like 50 of these cards, right? So it's just, there's a huge scale difference between these really rare cards. And that's why they keep bringing these values. And for me, where I spend most of my time recently in 90s cards, you're seeing the same thing. The serial number cards, number to 100 or below, are still breaking records. And it's because the supply is very low. Demand is pretty high. Even if the demand softens some, there's just not enough supply. And I think this is a great example of a card like that, which has just got tons of demand and just very limited supply.
Well, in one of your episodes, didn't you bring up that topic as far as how 90s low print run cards are comparable to pre-war?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the gateway.
Right.
For me, the two gateways that make pre-war and 90s cards very similar is the cards in the 90s that are really expensive are rare. That they're not just these overprinted cards that you hear about. And there's a lot of pre-war cards that have print runs like this card. Like there's only maybe 50, 60 graded, maybe 200 total that exist that are out there. Very similar to a lot of cards from the 90s that they have print runs of 100 or below for some of these really rare and valuable cards. The other thing is design. It's just you get these crazy cool designs like this Wagner card for me is really interesting because it's wider than a T card. I think it's about as tall as a T card. So it's like it's not a modern card design, but it's bigger. So
Right.
it's
That's
and
some
it's
substance to it compared to
yeah.
the
So
T card.
it's a different looking card. So to me, it also has more presence. It's like I was just showing off my T227, but like I just got the Bender here recently, and these cards have presence because they're bigger, right? When you see the Cobb or the Bender, there's a little bit of like that card looks awesome because it's just big compared to those tiny T cards or
Exactly.
E cards that we're used to.
Yep. I totally agree with that.
So what was the other lots you want to look at here?
Um, let's go to lot 783.
783. Okay, hold on.
If you go in the top right, yeah, we can sort it by lot number and just put the
Okay,
lot number in.
780. Hold on. I thought I could type in there, and it's not letting me.
Try over there to the right.
Let me go down here, maybe.
I think maybe on the left side on search, you can go.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like 783.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if that works. All right, who's the player?
Okay, it is Joe Jackson.
Okay, well.
So we're going to look at the Joe Jackson from the Morehouse Baking.
Morehouse Baking. Okay, well, there was. Is it right here?
That's it. 783.
There we go.
Yeah.
$87,000. Wow.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I like that card.
Now, do you have any Joe Jackson cards?
I do. I have mine is the blank back from the same set. Let me see if I can find it here. It's the exact same front, though.
Okay.
It's the, well, I say that and I can't find it now.
Well, that's how it always is.
There we are.
Oh, yep. There you go.
Yep. This is the blank back.
Very
But the
nice.
exact same front. So that's why I have a kind of a fondness for this Morehouse Baking. I like the M101 4s and 5s.
The thing that's interesting to me is, there we go. Yeah, again, the cancel stamp is different, or to me, it looks different.
Right, it is. It's a little lighter and it's in a different placement. So they probably just had a bunch of them and they were just clicking away at them. The stamp, stamp, stamp.
So,
which is really neat.
So $87,000. So do you think that was higher than the last time that sold?
Well, this is the first time. This is the only one that's ever been graded.
Wow.
Joe Jackson. This was one of the cards that they were had never showed up. The Ruth and the Jackson had never showed up until this find. So honestly, I'm really surprised that it didn't bring more.
So the last M1014 SGC 5 brought $45,000.
Okay, what about in like a 2.5 or 3?
A 3.5 brought 31,000 in 2023.
Yeah, this is quite the premium then.
So I mean, yeah, like that's still a pretty good premium. It's $50,000 over that one.
Right. And this set got a lot of publicity and a lot of coverage. There had been Morehouse Baking cards in existence, but none of them had showed canceled on the back, so they'd never been redeemed.
Right,
But
right.
at that time, they never knew that. They assumed that there was a Ruth and that the Jackson was in it, but none had ever showed up.
Yeah, no, it is a really just a really interesting, story and set, and reminds me a lot of the Black Swamp find, and just like when all of a sudden you get kind of a, I don't want to say massive, but a kind of a dump of the cards into the market, and to see how quickly they absorb and then kind of just get locked away, right?
Right. Oh, definitely, definitely.
All right, what's another lot that you were looking for that you want to
Okay,
talk
so
about?
let's go to lots. Let's see. Let's go to lot 699.
Okay, who is that?
This is a Christy Mathewson.
Okay,
This is a 14
let's
Crackerjack.
see.
This is a toughie.
Here we go. I love the sideways pose.
Yeah, right. I'm not. I've never got a clear answer or found out from research why they changed it to a portrait for the 15 Crackerjack. So it's one of a couple cards that they actually changed the picture from 14 to 15. A lot of the 14 Crackerjack Mathesons you find that are in the 1 to 2 range in grade don't look this nice. And the reason they got a 1 was that pinhole up there at the top.
Right.
Which, to me, does not bother me one iota. I just think that that is a beautiful card.
So the last sale of a authentic was 51,000. I in 2020 there was a one that sold for 26,000.
Yeah, this one brought 66,000 for a PSA.
So in May of this year, Memory Lane had a 3 that brought 145.
Right.
So
I think, I think with the eye appeal on this card, if you compare it to that PSA 3, other than the pinhole, this one's actually better centered.
It was. And yeah,
I thought this was a bargain to me.
Yeah, no, I think it, it's obviously went at $40,000 in 4 years from the last one sale.
Yes.
But comparatively, I agree. If you look at the big cards in this auction, this card seems to comparatively been cheaper than others in terms of just premium. And I think you're right, though, is that pinhole bothers some collectors.
It does, yeah.
And that makes it just one of those things where, I think if you were set building, this is the kind of card you were probably looking for, because like it's going to scare off some of the I don't call them high end. There's this, I don't know what we can call these kind of collectors, but you know what I'm talking about, Doug.
They're technical grade collectors.
Yeah.
Instead of eye appeal collectors.
Yeah, but there's these collectors out there who collect ones and twos. Excuse me, ones and twos that look like 7 or 8s, right?
Right.
And so they really are focused on that eye appeal, and this card wouldn't be in that realm. Right? They would not, because of that pinhole. They'd be, oh, this card looks like a 1. It's got a pinhole in it. So it kind of knocks those guys out.
Right. I think the new trend, when Jason, you and I were collecting years ago, it was all about the grade. and we
Right.
trusted what PSA and SGC put on the slab. Now, we always knew that not all cards / slabs were graded the same. Some had better eye appeal, but now it's to the point where, especially during COVID period when all the cards spiked, that hobbyists want to put their money in and maximize their value. So if
Yeah.
you can pick up a eye appeal card, a nice looking card like this with a pinhole in it
Yeah.
for $80,000 less, why wouldn't you?
Exactly. I mean, I had a 5.5 15 bender that was severely off center. Really did not like the IPL, and I downgraded to a 1.5 that has this centering,
And
and
now you're happy.
I'm much happier,
Yes,
and I didn't pay as much for sure. So
exactly.
that's I think getting into um, this whole what a collector is looking for. But I do think value is somewhat in the eye of the beholder on terms of when to overpay, when like going all in on a card. Because I know you just picked up your 1914 Joe Wood, right?
I did, yes.
And was it in this auction or was it in? It was a Love for the Game auction, right?
No, it was this auction,
It
and
was
we're
this
gonna
auction.
yeah, we're
All
gonna
right,
actually look. We're gonna actually look at it.
all right. Let's
It's
look
on
at that
video.
one. All
Okay,
right, let's do that one.
let's see. It is. You're gonna just bring it up by Joe.
Yeah, I just
Joe
searched
Wood.
for Joe
Okay.
Wood. We'll bring him up. I'm sure there's not a ton of Joe Wood cards. This that M101-2 is a cool looking card.
It is. I have that one signed.
Oh, that's right. Wow.
Yeah.
I really want the Bender in that set.
Yeah. It's those cards are. I shouldn't say cards, but I still consider them cards. Are going up in price a lot in the last 3 to 4 years. Yep, there's my card. That's my
All right,
baby right
there's your
there.
Bender, or sorry, there's your Wood.
Yeah.
So let's talk
Superior.
about the Joe Wood. And you got it in hand.
Right. So I missed out on this card. I think it was in the Heritage auction in April or May. Um, the timing just wasn't right on it. I thought I was bidding too much on the card. I didn't take into account that 14 Cracker Jack cards aren't as plentiful as they used to be. People are not letting loose of them. They're not coming out of collections, and they're climbing in price. So all the planets aligned on this one. I had the funds, um, and the auction came up at the right time, and so I just feel real fortunate that I was able to take advantage of it. And I, I honestly feel in my heart right now at this moment that I probably overpaid for the card.
Yeah.
But
So let's
I'm
talk
not.
about that.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think I'm going to feel that way. A year or two from now, I really don't. I'd say half the cards in my collection when I bought them, I thought, I probably overpaid for that, but it was a bargain at the time. So
Yeah. So comparatively, right? So what price range were these kind of cards selling for, let's say a year ago?
you didn't see them.
You didn't
They
see
did
them.
not
Okay.
come to Joe Wood did not come to market for maybe once a year for a 3 or 4 year period. So they just didn't come up. I knew some people who had them and they weren't letting loose of them.
Right.
Right. And then for a long time, I have a really nice 15 Cracker Jack of Joe Wood.
Mm-hmm.
let's see if I can get it in here, that I absolutely love. And so for a long time, I was thinking, why do I need the 14? I have a beautiful example of the 1915. It's the exact
Right.
same. It's the exact same picture.
Right.
It's the exact same back, other than the orientation. So I guess I was trying to talk myself out of it. But if I'm going to be Joe Wood collector, I need to have a 1914 Cracker Jack. So I
Well, yeah,
I checked it off finally.
you gave in to peer pressure. No.
I,
um, no, I think it's an interesting idea. You know, I looked up VCP. You know, you mentioned the one that sold earlier. You know, in memory lane, the PSA 2 that brought 3,000.
right.
But we know Cleveland happened, right? And it was a massive amount of people looking for 14s in Cleveland and kind of buying out every dealer who had
Yep.
a card.
Yep.
So do you feel like that, this card went up basically $1,000 this year already from the last time it sold? Do you feel part of it is rarity, or is it, the fact that you've got a lot more people looking to get the 14 sets completed, or there's, just more activity in 14? Which one do you think is a bigger factor?
I think there's a lot more activity in the 14 Cracker Jacks,
Yeah.
in the media and in the hobby. 14 Cracker Jacks have been real hot for a few years now. And then I think the other factor is that Joe Wood was relatively unknown until, I'm going to say, the last 5 to 10 years. You had some Boston fans and some Cleveland fans who knew who Smoking Joe Wood was. I think YouTube has gone a long way to try to educate, and I include myself, how great Joe Wood was. And I think that Joe Wood in general, his cards, all of his cards have gone up in price. I wish I could get the bargains that I was able to get 5, 10, 12 years ago on Joe Wood material. The
Yeah.
problem,
I mean,
the problem was that the really rare stuff didn't come up very often at all.
100%.
Yeah.
No. And yeah, it's like, there is that quandary. I've had it happen a few times. Like, 3 years ago, I knew 97 finest and boss gold refractors were going to become a big thing in the hobby, but I just couldn't find them to buy them.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh, I just don't want to buy them. It's like, no, no one's selling them. And they've all quadrupled in price probably since then. There's times when you get a feeling where you're like, okay, this set or this player is getting hot. And I think a good example that's Mo Berg, right? When the documentary came out,
Exactly.
books were made. It's like Mo Berg is going to blow up. Like his cards are going to become, like part of that subset of, like not a Hall of Famer, but treated just like a Hall of Famer, right? In terms of just value. Right. And I think, you got a few guys like that out there, who just, Joe Jackson's another good example, right? He should be Hall of Famer, right? And his cards are always considered like a Hall of Fame player. But then you got, again, those guys like Mo Berg. I'm trying to think of some other players, maybe some guys from the Yankees, around that same time period who aren't Hall of Famers, but since they were a Yankee, their cards are always, selling for a premium. They were on that Murderers Row team, back in the day.
Yeah. You know what comes to mind when we're talking about this is, for a long time, I knew that the 88 Topps Football Bo Jackson card, if I could find it in a PSA 10, would be a really, really good card.
Yeah.
And about the time I was looking for one on eBay and around, that crazy documentary came out. So
Yes. Yeah.
30 for 30.
Right. Yeah.
And blew all my chances of getting one at a reasonable price. So that's just when a card becomes in public eye and it becomes iconic, that's all it takes.
Yeah. No, and I think that's just hard to predict. I mean, and you got I think the big one this year was Josh Gibson, right?
Yes.
Anything Josh Gibson related, doesn't matter if even from the era, it went up in
Like
value.
the 74 Laughlin cards.
Yeah, the 74 Laughlin.
You couldn't give the things away for a long time.
100%.
Yeah.
But it just shows you like what, some changes in the rule books or whatever, and all of a sudden you've got a massive change. And I think a lot of people are speculating on Pete Rose, right? They think that now that he's gone, they're going to let him in the Hall of Fame. And so there's a lot of people out there speculating on Pete Rose. His cards are already pretty expensive, so I'm not sure how much higher you're going to get those cards to go. But I know a lot of people were buying Pete Rose right after he died, thinking that he's going to get in the Hall of Fame.
I think if Pete Rose doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, that his cards will probably dip a little bit. But if it gets in the Hall of Fame, I think they will definitely maintain the prices that they're at now.
I think the backwards question you have to ask with Pete Rose is, if you put him in the Hall of Fame, then you have to put Jackson in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it's going to get real convoluted real quick.
Yeah, so I don't think you can put Pete Rose in without Joe Jackson. So
yeah,
that's where you get into some tricky situations with the Hall of Fame, and I think that's why they're kind of, they've been very leery of addressing that situation, because of Joe Jackson.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation.
It is. So yeah, this card is still amazing. I'm glad you got it, Doug. I mean, on the idea that you overpaid.
Well, that's just a gut reaction.
Yeah.
But I've had that with a lot of cards. I want to show a card here that I thought that I overpaid for, and this was probably a dozen years ago. And this is my Wagner.
Yep.
From the
M116.
Yeah, Sporting Life. And I thought I grossly overpaid for it, but I really wanted it. That was my substitute for the T206, which I knew I would never get.
Right.
And it's pretty much the same picture as what's on that Tip Top bread. It's from the Carl Horner photograph.
Yeah.
I think I paid like $2,500 for that a dozen years ago. And I thought that was a lot of money. I mean, that was really, really strong. And gosh, they're going for, I think one went earlier this year or maybe late 23. One went for, I think, $30,000.
The last PSA 4 sold in May by Heritage brought $46,800.
That was a PSA 4?
Right. Yeah. And you have an SGC
5.
So the last PSA 5 sold this year by REA in February for $75,000.
Yeah.
So I think your $2,500 investment, Doug, has paid off.
Yeah.
I think you did okay. I don't think you can worry about overpaying. So I would say that, your $4,000 investment in Joe Wood, two things. One is that I think in 10 years, you're going to look at that like it was probably cheap. And even if it's not cheap, your gains on your Honus Wagner card will offset your losses on your Joe Wood card pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
So I mean, if you look at it as an average, you're betting you've got a pretty good batting average there on that one card. Yeah. To make up some losses, you can incur on some other cards.
And I probably shouldn't say this, but a another big factor for going ahead and pulling the trigger on that card was I felt that I was investing way too much time and effort in trying to track down that card.
Yeah.
And I was losing out on other purchases that probably I've already missed out on an opportunity. So I kind of just wanted to check it off my list and move on. And I hate to put it that way, but I felt like I just dedicated way too much time. This hobby is awesome, and for me, the history of the players, the cards, iconic cards themselves, the friendships that you make from the hobby. But right there at the top of the list is the hunt for me.
Mm-hmm.
I like the hunt. But I thought this hunt is exhausting me.
Right.
My networking um, just kept bringing me to dead end after dead end after dead end on this one. So I'm
Yeah.
I've checked this one off.
Well, and I think, Doug, the opportunity cost, right? You're kind of getting at is it's worth overpaying a little bit just to not have to worry about it anymore and not have to continuously try to find a card that may or may not come up for sale for another year, and
Exactly.
kind of beating yourself in, beating your head against the wall. I totally get that. There are times with when I look at Griffey cards where I'm like, I don't have this card. I should have the card because it's not, not a super rare one, but I don't want to pay $80 or whatever. And then at some point you just go like, just pay the $80. Like, just check it off the list and move on. Because
it reminds me of you picking up your 68 3D Clemente.
Yes.
I mean, it was heartbreaking.
Just right there.
A lot of time and effort. How many years were you looking for that card?
Well, in all honesty, I think I really started trying to find that when I moved to Illinois. That would have been in 1998. So that was when I first started to really put together my Clemente run. And I was highly aware of that card as being the rarest. So from 98 to probably 2000 and let's say 4, it was just kind of a pipe dream. And from 2004 to 2014, I probably had 3 to 5 chances to get it. 3 at least that were serious opportunities that I could never close the deal. So either auctions I missed, or the person wouldn't sell it, or the person sold it to someone else who came over the top, of a deal. Just, a lot of bad things happened along the way. So it just, felt like a card that was unattainable because there was always someone willing to pay more.
Exactly.
Like, no matter what the card was worth, last comp, there was always, and I look at that card that you just bought as saying someone out there said, well, the last one brought 3,000, but I really need it, so I'm going to bid 4,000, and you had to bid more, like just
Correct.
to get it, right? Because there was someone out there willing to pay more than that last one brought, because they either wanted it for their set or they needed it for whatever, whatever they're doing with the cards. And I feel like with Clemente, the biggest issue with Clemente was the registry was so big.
Right.
That you had so many guys in the registry that needed that card.
For Clemente, right?
For Clemente, yeah. Because that's the master registry, like Alpha and Omega card, one of the big cards in that registry. You have to have that card to have any sort of ability to either complete it or have a good score.
Climb, right.
Yeah. So I knew that registry was big.
I remember all the conversations that we had on car trips going to the Chicago Nationals over all the years that we'd go to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always get an update from you and
Yeah.
hear stories about your losses on that 68 3D Clemente.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I mean, there was a point in that 2014 period when I lost that REA auction. The memory lane auction, not memory lane, Mile High auction I lost, where I talked to Brian. I mean, he gave me what he thought it would bring. I had more than that, 20% more, and still lost. That was like the four I lost. In the REA auction, I think it was a 6, and when I lost it, that's when I quit collecting. So from 2014 to almost 2023, for 9 years, I quit collecting for the most part. Clemente, Stargell, May, I focused on Mays and Aaron. I kind of just said, I'm done with that. Like I was kind of done. You know, quit collecting pirates, quit collecting, just the stuff, move on to a different direction because, it was like,
It
not,
deflated you.
yeah, I was just wanting to move to something different because it just was so frustrating. And I'd almost sold off. I gotten close to selling off my Clemente collection just to be like, I'm never going to get it, never going to get that card. So yeah, it was dangerous. In fact, I think I did sell off one or two cards in that collection that were like high grade, like 9s or 8, like really high end
Right.
cards, just because I'm like, I want to buy something else, right?
Yep.
So it was dangerous. It almost got me to the point where I was going to liquidate that whole collection. So it wasn't like, oh, I just lost. It was like, I lost and I'm just going to completely get rid of the whole collection.
Yeah.
So it was a rough 9 years. I'm back into now buying more Clementes. I'm getting some of the Opichis. I got my whole base Opichi set now. I'm now getting Venezuelans and some of the other cons cards. So I'm back into the swing of things back with Clemente, but it knocked me off for like 9 years for the most part.
Once you get that top card, the rest of it's downhill.
Well, it definitely makes the momentum, right? You feel like you've got some chances to now make hay, like where you can close the gap a lot quicker, knowing that you don't have the big baddie out there just kind of
Hanging over your
laughing
head.
at you, like laughing at you, like saying you'll never have this card. Which is why I think, I'm sure there's a lot of Mano collectors that feel that way with 52 tops, right?
Yeah.
They're like, I can get every other Mano but that card, and
well, not because of availability, it's just the price
cost.
tag on it.
Yeah. Well, and also too, it's like people do hoard that card. Like they don't just let it go. They're like, oh well, it's
it's usually the last card that goes.
Yeah, or it's going to be an auction and you're going to be competing with a lot of other collectors to try to get it, right? It's not like you're going to get it. You're not going to get one cheap, or on a good deal a lot of times. It's one of those cards. It's just a tough card. I think as you get into, I'm sure with your Joe Wood collection, as you've knocked off a lot of the big ones, it's like it's more of an availability issue versus like, like they're just really rare, the ones I need. Versus like, oh, they're going to be ultra painful to buy. Was this one of the last ones you felt like was going to be super painful to pay for?
Until some other stuff comes up that is one-off cards.
Yeah.
Maybe a pop of 1 or a pop of 2. And they haven't sold for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell what they would bring.
Well, no, I really like, I really like the fact that, with your focus that you still pick up some other pieces,
Right.
like you're not just like, hey, it's a Joe Wood or bust, but you're very selective. And I think that, I know you said last time you have less than like 100 cards, total, which is, I think a very disciplined way of going about it. I have more cards than that just sitting on my
Oh, I know you do.
bench in front of me, or behind me in my
Right.
display. So it just shows you like there's different ways to do this. So another card I brought up here was I really thought it was interesting. You want to talk about is this Jello box, right?
I did. Yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
This complete Jello box from 1962. The thing that got me was, so here's the thing that got me. Okay, if you look at it, right, the way these are graded, right, you cannot have for PSA any of the black not showing.
Correct.
So if you look at this part of this box here, this black is printed on
It's
the
almost
other edge.
impossible to do.
So how would you cut this card out and grade it? It'd be impossible.
Right.
Which just says to me, there's just if this was a common issue, because again I bring it back up, there's not much space over on the side, right?
No, not a
Like
bit.
it's not like it's that far off center. So it appears the Jello boxes, like to get one that you could cut out to make a box that PSA could grade would be very challenging.
Yeah.
And this complete box sold for $43,000, which is,
Crazy.
which is a high number in
It
my
just goes
opinion.
to show you how many mantle collectors are out there.
When it shows you too, when a piece comes up that's pristine, like that box looks amazing.
It does.
Like it looks like it was.
Can you bring it up?
Yeah, let me pull
Yeah,
it up here. Yeah, that box is amazing.
it
So
is.
yeah, when you look at it again, that's the edge. It's on the other side of the box.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um,
The card would look funny if you cut it
yeah,
on the back side of the block line like they require. And then you
and
have
if
the
you
edge on the other side.
excuse me, if you go to 1962 Jello to see if there is actual manuals that's been sold, I'm not sure this card has enough of a following to be actually able to be sold, or enough availability.
Right.
But let's
It's a
see
tough
here.
one. Well, I
If I
think
look it up,
whoever put this in the auction as the box, as the unopened box, did well not to try to cut it and make it
yeah,
into a
that
card.
would have been a horrible
Right.
thing to do for something like this rare.
Right. And I'm
Because
sure
this is,
this is a one of a kind thing, I'm sure.
yeah, no, and it definitely presents well. Like that's going to be someone's key centerpiece to a mantle collection that's probably very mature. Like no one's going to buy this to put it in a collection that has like 10 cards, and like like you probably have every mantle card, and you need something like this to make your collection even more
Yeah.
stand out, right?
Right.
Like this is I call this is like, this is a collector's thing. Like only a big time mantle collector will be willing to pay that amount of money, because they know what it's worth.
Right.
Yeah, like in VCP there's a complete box that has no sales data yet. So they've been keeping complete box sell data, which I find interesting. But if you go to the hand cut mantle sale, and I doubt there's going to be many PSA, so that's going to be my first thought, is that there's going to be mostly SGC sales. There's a PSA 3. Wow. I'm shocked that there's a PSA 3 that did sell, and it sold for $381, $382.
Now, how long ago was that?
That was in July, and there was another one in May that sold for 1,000.
Wow.
Both threes, but
Yeah.
a majority are authentics. Like if I look at them,
Well, and we see why now.
yeah, but but someone in 2023 got a PSA 4 for $156.
Oh my goodness.
So, and it was very common, yeah, for these cards to sell in that, in that range back in the day. So, it just shows you what these, you know, um, I'll call it like or these food issues or non basic cards are going to start bringing, because this is the stuff that's rare. Like this is the stuff that you're not going to just get, if you're a an eBay browser or just someone going to card shows. Like this is the rare stuff that these collectors will pony up that money for. And I think it's a really cool item.
You
I'm
would think
really
that,
shocked that
yeah,
it's that nice, honestly.
yeah, I'm kind of surprised that PSA wouldn't take a stab at um, grading that and encapsulating it in some way. I mean, they're doing PSA is getting ready to go into unopened games and
Right.
comics.
In
So,
comics, yeah.
I mean, if this was slabbed and graded and authenticated, I mean, the moon is the limit on that thing.
So another card you wanted to talk about is this Crofts Coco
Right.
Honus Wagner. So what's rare about this card?
It's the back.
It's the back, okay?
Does it have a picture of the back? Yeah, there we are.
It does right here.
Right.
There we go.
So that is a very, very tough back, especially for the Wagner. There's two. There's a Crofts back, and then there's a Crofts Coco. The Crofts Coco has this
picture
on the back. I think I put over here in my notes that the last PSA 3 to sell was on December 12th, 2023.
Mm.
And it sold for $10,099. And it looked like it looked really bad compared to this SGC3. And you see what this SG or PSA 3 brought, $40,800.
Well, now
wait a minute. I'm sorry. The SGC brought the 40,000. The PSA, which had wet transfer, so you could see through it.
Okay.
Which in some cases the collectors like even more than a nice example that's not wet transfer. It only brought $10,099, but it's such a tough card that when you wait, a year, look at the price difference: 10,000 compared to 40,800.
Well,
because they just don't ever come to market.
The thing that you're killing me about too is like there's a Chief Bender in the set too.
Oh yes.
that's now you've got me hooked on finding a Bender now, which is yeah.
Now I didn't look at the pop counts on that, so I'd be curious to see what kind of pop counts are on the Crofts Coco ones. I actually have the original Crofts Coco container.
Really?
that's pictured on the back of this card.
That's really
And
cool.
and so at one time I was looking to buy one of the Cross Coco. It could just even be a common. I just wanted
Yeah,
as a display piece to
as a display
display the
piece.
back with my container. And but they've just always been really tough.
Well, I just find it interesting because it still fits that narrative, right? That same exact card REA sold 3 years apart, and it goes from 10,000 to 40,000.
Right.
It's just the narrative that these cards are all going down and the COVID era is over is just it's not true for some of
Right.
these really really tough cards like that.
I agree.
It's just because again, that was peak. 2021 was really peak in terms of pricing,
Right.
and now we're
Well,
seeing quadruple. It's not like we're going up 10 to 12, 10 to 15. We're going 10 to 40
well, people
for
were
the
too.
same card.
If people were spending their money correctly, and I don't want to be the one that says, poo poo on buying, brand new basketball cards of all these, high, I don't know, and spending, this kind of money on
On
basketball
Lucas.
cards, that are practically worthless, Zion and,
Mm-hmm.
but so I mean, there was funds out there to spend on this type of material.
Well, yeah.
They
I mean,
just
me and you both. But I mean, I bought my Honus Wagner, the one I have for $1,250,
and yeah, I love yours.
and it's like worth 40,000 now, right? So it's like
Right.
like it went up 40 times
Yep.
in that or 35 times in that same time period. And and again, I think the problem when you get into this era of collecting is that if you say things like that, people will, the people that collect the modern either will be like, well, yeah, but there's like this, whatever card that sold for $2 or $3 million, So like we're trying to get those cards. Like we're trying to, get modern cards that are going to be worth, millions. And it's like, it's a kind of whataboutism. And, what we're saying is like, look, the cards that we're talking about in terms of vintage are cards of players that A, will never go down, but B, they're rare, and now they're going up in value because they had a very limited supply. In a lot of cases, they look very nice, like they're nice looking cards from that era, and
Right.
it's like they hate to hear the fact that like there is some validity in that the modern market is really a flipper and kind of like holding the bag type environment, to where it's really about selling as soon as you can. And these big cards like the Paul Skeens card that just, the next $1 million card that's going to sell. It's like, that card could be worth nothing if he
Yeah.
has a bad year, right?
Yeah.
If he blows his arm out, right? If he
Yeah.
turns into Strasburg,
Exactly.
who had a great career, but now his cards are worth nothing, no matter what card it is, because he blew his arm out. Kerry Wood. I mean, you've got tons of examples of this happening over and over, and it's that risk factor. And again, if you're into it for the gambling aspect, but there was a way to collect cards in that time period where you could be risky, but could have hedged your bet. And very few people wanted to hear the idea of hedging your bet. And, my buddy Dustin, sports card dad, he's made video. And so as sports card investors showing like, oh, vintage cards can go down, and give prices like, and they generally give prices of cards like 50s and 60s, or
Right.
T cards have gone down in value. And it's like, those are not the rare ones.
Nope. Those are overpopulated.
So, the message around, if you are buying rare, and again, it's very common. It's very much like buying rare Jordan cards from the 90s at the same time. Like you could have curated a 90s collection of Jordans and Griffey cards in 20 years ago and made a killing.
Sure.
The same way you could have done the same thing with pre-war cards. You know, you mentioned your Joe Wood cards, even non-Hall of Famers. You could have done, you know, you could have really made a lot of money.
Definitely.
And it's just the hobby never recognizes the fact that those kind of opportunities existed in pre-war. You know, the Jordan guys, you know, they will tell you in thousands and thousands of blogs and sorry, YouTube videos how smart they were to do that, right?
Yeah.
But there's tons of you guys out there that were buying pre-war that are now sitting with collections that are worth 4, 10, 20 times more than what they were worth, you know, in 2020. You know, so it's an interesting thing because going through this REA auction, you can just see these prices are not going down. This isn't like, and it's not because we're driven by some sort of like artificial, you know, thing, because the economy is just mediocre right now. It's not doing great. It's not, you know, we're not in a recession.
Right.
The economy isn't just banging. We don't have the whole COVID money in you know, flowing in anymore. So this is like just normal collector behavior with these prices.
Yeah.
And I just think that is what's cool about this time period is this is really what the market is. This is not an overinflated market because, you know, we're talking about cards from multiple different sets, multiple different players. It's not, you know, one thing. It's not, you know, it's not a run on the 1914 Cracker Jacks. It's across a lot of boards.
And I don't want anybody to get confused or misunderstand what we're trying to relay here is, yes, it ended up being a good investment, but that was not the reason for us buying these cards. The reason for buying these cards is because we're collectors. We knew that they were tough to get.
Yes.
We like the players. We like the history behind them. We like the looks of the cards. Just a lot go into it. So, you know, don't be confused that we were doing this as
Investments.
Yeah. So I think that when anytime you buy with the pretense of investing, you're asking for trouble. Buy what you like and buy what you have interest in. And then, you know, you do want to buy stuff that's nice eye appeal, and that if you have to move it, you can move it freely and still make money on it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I kind of alluded earlier is like, if you were a pre-war investor, right, you would be like, oh, I need to be getting my 1914 Cracker Jacks. They're going to go way up because there's a run on the bank, right? And that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is like, if you know, like want to get your Joe Wood, for me to get my Chief Bender, I'm going to have to pay more now than I did 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because those cards are going up in value because people are hoarding them, buying them, whatever. There is a run on the bank. But I like the card enough that I'm not buying that card as an investment. I'm buying it because I want in my collection, and it might be possibly cheaper in the future, but probably not, and probably not that much more. So it probably, if I have the funds and the cards available, I should buy it now. Like there's no, you know, like we're not saying it's an investment. We're saying the pricing is going up because the pricing is going up, and I have to pay more now than I did. You know, and I think that's just the reality. And
right,
you know,
it's like going to the grocery store. I just went to Walmart tonight. Every time I go to Walmart, I'm thinking, are these real prices?
Yeah.
I mean, but you really don't have a choice.
Yeah. No,
To
our pricing on consumer goods, as an index, isn't going to fix itself overnight. These things, these macroeconomic issues, to trickle down to card prices is just, that's not how the reality works, right? Because
right,
so much of cards and sports cards is people, like you said, I want to say impulse buying, but they're buying cards with their heart more than their head, you know, to a certain extent, to where you want the card because it needs to be in your collection because it makes the collection better and more complete. So you're not thinking about it completely from, what am I going to get this? What's it going to sell for in 10 years or 5 years or whatever that, you know, invest and hold strategy could be. That is the majority of these cards being sold. And that's why sometimes you get an anomaly, right? You get like something that undersells or oversells
right,
because it's not a science, it's not a stock, right? These are cards, and sometimes things like that happen. And we've all been on that end of these auctions where you felt like you got a really good deal. I mean, I scored big, and then you've been on the other end where you're like, I had to really, really
right.
overpay for something to really get it into that. So, Doug, I think this was a great conversation. I think we had some other conversations we're going to plan on doing. I think we'll keep those for the next episodes because I feel like we have a lot of good things to talk about in the future.
Sure.
I think we want to talk about underrated sets in the future. I know we've worked on some designs of sets that we'll put or sets that we think have great designs, but have opportunities for people who are looking to buy into some really nice pre-war or 90s cards that aren't going to break the bank but are really cool. And I think that's something that we'll talk about next time, because I think this was a great conversation about REA and about auctions and just general pricing we're seeing right now with vintage cards and pre-war
Sure.
cards. And I'm really stoked that to have Doug here with me because he's such a wealth of knowledge on these areas. So Doug, thanks for joining. I
Had
know
fun tonight, as
yeah,
usual, Jay.
we're figuring the channel out, but I'm really appreciate the conversation, and we'll get back together and discuss some of these other topics. I think I want to give enough time to them. I don't want to like shortchange them either because I think there's
Right.
some really awesome
I,
topics that we're going to get to.
I totally agree with that because what we've talked about on both of our ends, I think, is really beneficial, and I'd hate to shortchange it.
Yeah. So we'll get together. Today, I think what we're going to say is that we're going to try to get these videos out once a week going forward. I'm back. My travel schedule for next year is going to be, I've already got trips to Chile, Spain, Germany planned, but generally we'll work around those. And I've got a new rig here, so hopefully you guys like my new sound and my new visuals. I got new equipment, so hopefully I'm not on the potato camera like I was last time with no good sound. So we're trying to improve. And so yeah, I appreciate the conversation, Doug, and um, you know, hopefully we'll keep the weekly rotation going because I love talking to you, and I can't wait to bring on some other people on the channel as well.
Yes, I agree with that, and it was a pleasure again tonight, and I can't wait till next week.
All right, we'll see you guys next time on Past and Present Cardboard. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye.